Everyone, thank you for joining the tutorial. Um, Let me begin by introducing myself. My name is Soji Thomas. I have about 15 plus years of experience as a developer working in different technologies and programming languages. I have learned a lot watching YouTube videos and tutorials on other websites, watching and reading forums online. So I would like to finally contribute back to the community. Let's start with this topic. Today I'm going to cover multiprocessing in Python. So what is multiprocessing? With the advent of advanced hardware and multiple processors and cores, we would like to make use of the multiple processing or the more advanced processing power it provides. So let's start with a very simple example. Let's write a program that has two functions, one that adds two numbers, a and b, and prints the output of it. Another one that subtracts two numbers and prints the output of it. And we'll just call those two functions with two values. We're adding 4 and 5, and we are subtracting 3 from 8. Let's run this program. So if we run this program, as expected, it prints the output for 4 plus 5, which is 9, and subtracts 3 from 8, gives the output of 5. To get a better context of the process that it is executing under, we can use the logging framework. I have a few bits of code here. I'm going to just copy paste that here so we don't take up the time. You can learn more about logging in another module or from another tutorial. But here we use the logging module, and I'm going to say I'm going to import logging module. I'm going to import sys module, and I'm going to say get the root logger, add the sysout as my stream handler. I'm going to set the formatter to be the time, to print the process ID, process name, thread ID, thread name, which will give you the whole context under which this process is running, and we'll print the message. So we'll change these programming output statements to be log statements. So we'll say log.info for a plus b and log.info for a minus b. Let's run this program again and let's see the difference. Alrighty, now we can see the context in which this process is running. So we see a process ID of 24160, a process called main process, a thread ID within the process, and the value. Similarly, the second function is executed within the same process and gives the output. To make it a little bit more readable, let's add some more logging statements or enhance the logging. Sum is, and we'll print the output and do format str of str lowercase of a plus b. So this will give the output of a plus b in a more better format. So let's do the same for a minus b. I'm going to copy this over and I'm going to add it here and then say a minus b, right? And this is actually difference, right? Difference is a minus b. Alright, let's run this program again. As expected, same. They both run in the same process and they give the output. Sum is 9, difference is 5. Good, great. But as we noticed, they both run in the same process. How to make them run inside different processes, hence making use of multiple cores. Now, it does not make sense in this very simple program of an add and subtract, but if you take into context a very complicated CPU intensive process, obviously this makes sense, right? You want a core to execute a process while another processor or core is executing another process simultaneously. They are not interdependent on, or they are independent of each other. They can run in parallel, and then you can combine the result if you want, if you so seek to, right? That's where multiprocessing, that's where the power of multiprocessing comes into play. So let's introduce multiprocessing. Multiprocessing in Python is done in two ways. One is the use of functions, and two is the use of class, which extends the class process. So let's start with the first one. We will start with a process and that calls a target function. So multiprocessing comes from a module called, obviously, multiprocessing, and we use a class called process. So process is what we use as our class to start multiple processes. Let's see how this works. So I'm going to copy paste these things so you don't see me typing a whole bunch of code and it's faster. So here we go. What I have done here is I have instantiated a new process with name. I have given it a name called add process. This is not a mandatory field, but you will see why I'm doing this. Obviously, you can see I have a process name in the logger. I want that name to be a custom name rather than a default name that it gives. The next argument is target. Target as a parameter takes in the value of the function that you are going to pass into the process class that it will use to spawn a new process. So in this case, we are calling the add process, right? We had earlier used the numbers 4 and 5. Let's keep that consistent. We'll use 4, we'll use 5. Okay, so we start a process with add, and we're passing in the arguments 4 and 5. Alrighty. Well, we haven't started one yet. We will start it with the next line. We're going to call p1.start. Good. Let's do the same for subtract. So we're going to subtract. We're going to start or create a new process for subtract, and we're going to give the same numbers 8 and 3 for. So we are subtracting 3 from 8. We're going to go p2.start. Alrighty. So we started these two processes, right? So let's see what happens. Let's comment out these two lines. Let's comment out these two lines, and let's execute this program. All right. So here we have an example of, you can see how this started with 24219 add process and 24220 subtract process, right? So we have those two processes running as separate processes, or those two functions running as separate processes and printing the output from two different processes. All right, how do we differentiate between, well, there is something I'll come back to here. There is a join that is very important. Part of this two-part tutorial, we'll talk about how to add some more lines so that we can add some more context to this and see the main process ID and process name, etc. And we'll also see the use of the process.join. So let's go to the next video.